Baruch Hashem, we are back with 30 letters in 30 days for another cycle. We've done this twice before. 3 years ago, 2 years ago, yeah, and then not a year ago. Last year I didn't do it. And the past year I just didn't stop hearing complaints from people who were saying, what happened to 30 letters in 30 days? You got to do it again. So I got tired of the complaints, and here we are again. Okay, so basically for those of you who are doing this for the first time, or those of you who did it before but you don't remember the premise, 30 letters in 30 days is 30 letters that the Lubavitcher Rebbe wrote in response to various different people about various different things that are printed in the Igros Kodesh. That's the multi-volume set of printed letters from the Rebbe in 30 days. Which 30 days? The 30 days before Yud Aleph Nisan, which is the Rebbe's birthday. We study a letter every night as a preparation for the Rebbe's birthday. So if you're interested in some of the background about how these letters were compiled and how they were brought to publication, I'm not going to talk about that history tonight. I've done that before. You can go back in the archives, whatever platform you're watching or listening on right now, just go back to the first couple of classes from 3 years ago. And in the first couple of classes, I did a little history at the beginning of class 1 and class 2 and filled in some of the background about how the Igros came to be. But I'm not going to do that this time. I'm just going to jump into the first letter. And I'm not even going to give you background about the letter because the context will become pretty clear as we go. This is from volume 20 of the Igros. It's letter 7,556. And here we go. Baruch Hashem, Aleph Shvat, Tavshin Chaf Aleph, Brooklyn, Bracha V'Shalom. By the grace of God, the first day of Shvat, that means Rosh Chodesh 5721, that's the spring of 1961. Brooklyn, blessings and greetings. As I've mentioned before, Bracha V'Shalom means that Rebbe is writing to a woman. Shalom, the bracha, is to a man because it's not considered modest for a man to give shalom, to give a greeting to a woman. So for a woman, she gets the salutation bracha and then shalom, but not shalom and then bracha. B'mayna l'michtava, in answer to her letter, but literally it's to her letter, which is the formal way of writing in the third person in Hebrew. I'm just going to say to your letter. That's when I translate in English, I'll just say it in the second person. Also, I'm not going to follow the English translation inside because it'll just be cumbersome for me to flip between the two columns. What am I referring to? There's a PDF. If you're not looking at the PDF, if you're on SoulWords.org, the simplest thing is just to look at the bottom of the video player, and you should see a place to download a PDF. If you're watching somewhere else, you got to get a hold of our PDF. Maybe send us an email at info@soulwords.org. Oh, also, if you have a letter that you would like to study over the next 30 days, a letter from the Igros, also you could let us know at info@soulwords.org. Okay, so again, I'm not going to translate I'm not going to read the English translation here. It's here for your, if you want to look at it afterwards. But I'm just going to sort of translate as I go because it'll just be smoother and easier. But B'mayna l'michtava, in answer to your letter, Boi keseves al matzav rucha v'aboyes shekamo bekitasa, where you write about your state of mind and the problems that have arisen in your class. Okay, so who's the Rebbe writing to? A teacher. She has a class, and apparently she has some problems in her class, and apparently it's affected her matzav ruach, her state of mind. So this is a teacher who's having some problems in class that are leading to some type of emotional issue. Okay, that's pretty clear, right, from what we read. All right. Asher lochein le'es ata ozves avedasa beheira. And because of that, you have quit your job in teaching. Whoa. V'shayelis daiti b'zeh, and you ask my opinion about this. Stop. I want to ask you a question. If you've done 30 letters in 30 days with us before, or if you're familiar with the Rebbe's letters, you should be able to answer this question. If you haven't, then I hope that by maybe a week or two into this journey, you will be able to answer this question. The question I would like you to answer is, you don't have to tell me what you think that Rebbe is going to answer, but do you think that Rebbe is going to just tell her, oh, you quit teaching? Yeah, no problem. That's fine. Okay. We all know that the Rebbe is not going to just let somebody quit something, especially something wholly like teaching. The question is, how is the Rebbe not going to let her quit? I mean, we expect some compassion. We expect some type of validation for her struggles. And, how the Rebbe is going to manage to do both, to basically keep her teaching, but also, be nice about it, be empathetic about it. Yeah, that's the fun of learning Igros. Let's see how the Rebbe answers. Okay. Uladaiti hasibis lamatzav rucha shalosh hein. In my opinion, the reason for her mood are threefold. Okay, so the Rebbe is going to give 3 reasons why she's not feeling well, why she's sad. All right. Aleph. In other words, let's use the term that I think is more popular today. A teacher is feeling despondent, discouraged to the point of quitting. We call that, what's the word we use? Burnout. Right. Okay. Teacher burnout. Fine. So the Rebbe says, I think there are 3 reasons here why you came to this point of burnout. All right. Aleph. Me'ez siba shekmuven rak b'makom efshel ledaito. For some reason that really only someone in your place could know, meaning I don't know the exact reason, but for some reason, ayefa b'yeser me'avedasa, you're extra tired with your work. Extra tired, meaning this, at least it implies to me, there's a certain level of being tired with any job, especially with teaching, that's to be expected. But you are ayefa b'yeser, you're extra tired. B'tziruf, in combination with oid inyan ma, some other factor. And the Rebbe says in parentheses, it's not really certain what that other factor is, but it could be tircha b'bayis, some, burdens in your home, in the household, inyan acher me'enza, something else similar to that, hamayagea esaguf, that's tiring out your body. Okay? So first things first, the Rebbe says, I think that you're tired. Like you're overworked. There's something going on that's causing you to be extra tired with your job, more tired than normal. And that's also compounded by something else that's going on in your life, probably something in your home. And it's sort of like stacking up. And yeah, you're tired. You're physically worn out. The Rebbe says, that exhausts your body. You're physically worn down. Okay. So that's, first of all, that's part of why you're feeling burnout. Base. Kenira, it seems, Kibla Kita Gavaya Yeser Masher Shira, you got a class that's a little bit higher than what you estimated, meaning higher level learning. Or one that's a little bit higher than what you should be dealing with at the beginning of your teaching on your own. I don't know if she used to be a teacher's assistant, and now this is the first time she's had her own class, but the Rebbe is saying, this might be just the class level may be more challenging than what you expected and not really what you're suited for at this stage. Meaning you'll get there, but you're starting out now and it might be a little bit advanced for you. So that's the second reason. All right. First reason is you're physically tired for whatever reason, because you got stuff going on maybe at home that's wearing you down physically. That's one thing. 2 is, I think the class that you got assigned to was a little bit more challenging than what you were ready for. And 3, now this is the longest one. Al pi mavor b'sefer Tanya Kedisha, in accordance with what is written in the Holy Tanya. Shrei b'nei adam heim loy b'medreges tzadikim. Most people are not on the level of tzaddik. Now, in Tanya, tzaddik doesn't just mean a good guy. We use the term, oh, you're a tzaddik. We use it... it's the Shema Mushal, as the Alter Rebbe calls it. But tzaddik in Tanya means somebody who has no Yetzer Hara. He has no Yetzer Hara. Now, we know that most people are not tzaddikim. They don't not have a Yetzer Hara, meaning they do have a Yetzer Hara. Which means there's still place for the Yetzer Hara to try to entice them. Hare, echod hataksisim one of the most effective strategies of the Yetzer Hara, and therefore especially dear to him. Very interesting. The Yetzer Hara has a job. Like anyone, he wants to do his job well. So he's going to use the tactics that are the most effective, and when he finds a tactic is effective, he's going to favor that. He's going to like using it. So here's one of the favorite tactics of the Yetzer Hara. Who? Lahamshich es ha'adam lekav shel atzvus u'nefilas ruach v'chulu. To get a person to be sad, to get a person to be despondent. That's one of his favorite tactics. He likes to make people depressed. He likes to bring them down emotionally because then they're vulnerable. Then they'll listen to all types of foolishness. All right. Va'oimid al hamishmar, and he stands on guard, meaning he's watching, lechapes shas hakosher, and to search out a propitious time, propitious for him, for the Yetzer Hara, kisha ha'adam nimtza b'matzav shel hayefos v'chiyetzav zeh, when a person is tired. Sha'az, that then, when the person's tired, benokol yesa lahamshich olav matzav ruach hanal, it's easier for the Yetzer Hara to bring the person down emotionally. Okay, you follow that? So the Yetzer Hara, one of his favorite tactics is to bring a person down emotionally, to make them feel blah, because then the person is going to be morally weakened. And that's the Yetzer Hara's job, is to make people make poor moral choices. Okay. Now, the Yetzer Hara doesn't just come up to a person in a normal situation and start trying to make them depressed. No, the Yetzer Hara is smart about it. He waits until a person is physically tired. And that's when he comes in and he starts wearing away at a person emotionally and tries to make them depressed. You ever heard of halt? Halt, stop, right? Sometimes you got to stop and you got to ask yourself, halt, H-A-L-T. That's hungry, angry, lonely, tired. Because when you're hungry, angry, lonely, tired, then you're more vulnerable to poor decision making. So that I was talking about the T of halt. When a person is tired, punch it, physically tired, that is a time the Yetzer Hara will take advantage. So basically what the Rebbe says, three things. One is you have some extra burdens in your life right now that are physically wearing you out. That's one thing. Two is your class is a little more challenging than what you were ready for. Three is the Yetzer Hara has taken advantage of your physical tiredness to come in and bring you down emotionally, which is one of the things the Yetzer Hara loves to do. Okay. Mahanal muvenis daiti. From the above, it's understood, my opinion, sheposhit it's obvious that you have the ability to continue in education and to succeed and to go from level after level, meaning you have what it takes to succeed in education. There's no question about that. But what? You have to get rid of the three things that we just spoke about. So, in other words, you've got what it takes, but you've got these three issues that we just enumerated. But if we would get rid of those three issues, you would be fine. You'd be able to teach. You wouldn't be burnt out anymore. So we got to deal with those three issues. Now, from last to the first, in reverse order. Remember that Rebbe said three reasons why you're burnt out. Now we're going to go backwards through those causes of burnout and talk about how to deal with them, right? So the first one was you're physically tired. You got stuff going on in your life that's just draining you physically. Maybe it's stuff at home, but you're extra tired right now physically. Two is your class was a little more challenging than what you expected. Three is the Yetzer Hara is taking advantage and he's using your physical tiredness as a vulnerability to bring you down emotionally. All right. So let's go backward through those three things. Aleph. So this is how we're going to respond to the third thing, which is the Yetzer Hara has started messing with you. Lahachlit shaloi lishama lepitui Yetzer Hara. Very short and sweet. You got to make a decision. You're not going to listen to the Yetzer Hara. It's very interesting. The Rebbe doesn't get into a whole back and forth because inherently, when you get into a debate with the Yetzer Hara, you've already lost. Okay? Just make a decision. I'm not going to listen to him. I know he's got a job to do. His job is to ruin my life through getting me to make poor decisions. I know he's exploiting the vulnerabilities of me having a physical body, which is right now worn down. But you know what? The only real response is just to make a decision. I'm not going to entertain any of his arguments. That's it. I'm not listening to the guy anymore. So when he comes to me and says to me, are you really such a good teacher? Should you really have gone into education? Are you really cut out for this? Do you really think you're making a difference? Do you think those kids even like you? It's like, you know what? I'm not listening to you. Okay. So that's one. Base. This is to deal with issue number 2, which was the class was a little bit more challenging than what you were ready for. Livcher mi bein akitos zeis hakala beyeser min nekudas hamashmas v'gam b'shetach geva halimudim. Choose a new class which is easier as far as the instruction level and also discipline, like kids that are a little bit easier to discipline. Just get assigned to a new class. It'll be just a little bit easier. All right. Simple. Practical. Gimel. All right. Now this is to respond to issue number 1, which was that you're physically tired right now, that you're worn out, that something is draining you. Lahaschil b'heira la'acha menucha k'pshuta. Go back to teaching, but after some rest. You need R&R. You do need some rest. That when your body won't be tired and exhausted. By the way, it's interesting. Yesterday's Rambam, if you're learning 3 chapters a day of Rambam, so yesterday we learned the Rambam in Hilchos Deis, where he talks about how it's important to be healthy in order to serve Hashem. Okay. Now, not everyone has the same amount of time that they need in order to rest. What does it mean to rest? I mean, it's a different amount for everybody. Somebody, I think someone asked the Rebbe once how it's possible he sleeps so little. The Rebbe says, I sleep as much as everyone else, just I do it faster. Okay, so everyone has a different amount of time they need for rest. For some people, it's good enough a few hours to rest, and then ready to get back to work. For other people, they need a few days, many days. But whatever amount of rest you need, the common denominator is you need to have an objective look at yourself, at the way things really are. This means the reality is there's nothing here unusual. There's no yetim and a klal. There's nothing going on in your situation that's extraordinary. See, it's very common that when you start to feel sorry for yourself, you start to think that your situation is so unusual, nobody would understand, nobody's gone through this. The Rebbe's comforting her, telling her, there's nothing unusual about your situation. Ki matzav rogel, it's a normal situation. Ella, but here's what happened. So then why did you get so overwhelmed? Because many things all happened at once. That's why you got inundated with a flood of issues. Each of those issues, that I was about to say it right now, each of those issues by itself, you'd be able to deal with it. But, it's like the straw that broke the camel's back. The guy puts the straw on the camel's back, and it's fine, and it's fine. He loads it all up, and then he puts one more straw, and then the camel's back breaks. Well, why would one straw break the back? Because that was just the tipping point. So you hit your tipping point. That's what happened. But each of the issues independently, listen what the Rebbe says. The result was unusual. Each of the individual causes were not unusual, but the compounded result was unusual. Each one of them on their own is not particularly difficult or big. So therefore, you can relatively easily deal with them. You've got this. Yeah, see, it's so interesting. The Rebbe is saying, I'm validating the fact that you're overwhelmed. I'm not arguing with him, not telling you you're not overwhelmed. But let me explain to you the mechanics of how you became overwhelmed. You didn't get hit with anything that you can't deal with. You just got hit with a bunch of stuff that you normally would be able to deal with, but you got hit all at once. And that's why you got knocked flat. And that makes sense. Okay. Which is why you're going to rest up. And when you're rested, you're going to come back to teaching. All right. Now, since a person is inherently subjective about himself, a person can't be fully objective about himself. Person's not always able to assess his koichos, his abilities. We underestimate ourselves. We ignore the abilities that we have. Or I would call this extenuating circumstances, how much you're affected by things going on in your life. In other words, it seems like that I was saying we underestimate our powers we also tend to not realize how much stuff in our environment is affecting us. And so if we don't really if we don't understand those two factors, we might think that we're really weak, but we're not really weak because A, we have koiches that we don't realize. B, we're not understanding that we're in a situation right now that is particularly challenging, and that's why we feel the way that we do. But if we had objectivity, we'd realize we're able to deal with this. Okay. V'lochin. Therefore, how are you going to get out of this subjectivity that you have? You should consult with your friends who understand this, who recognize all this. And it's understood, obviously, one of the main people you should consult with, Menal Beis HaSefer Rav Zilberstrom, your principal of your school, Rabbi Zilberstrom. Rabbi Zilberstrom was a principal in the Reshet, the system, the network of schools of Ola Yosef Yitzchak in Eretz Yisrael, which is apparently where this woman was teaching. So the Rebbe says, get objectivity, talk to your friends, but speak to Rabbi Zilberstrom, the menahel, the principal of the school. He's going to help you have a more objective understanding of yourself. Okay. Hashem, who individually supervises all of us individually. And you have seen Hashem's kindness in an obvious, revealed way in your past and in your not so distant past, meaning not that long ago. You have seen Hashem's revealed goodness in your life. So for sure Hashem will lead you to a good place. As long as you strengthen in your betachin, in your trust in Hashem, in the creator and director of the world. And then you'll be tranquil and happy and glad of heart. With blessings for good tidings, that you should be able to report good news in all of the above. Amazing. So here we have insight for a teacher with burnout. He's not letting her quit. The Rebbe's not letting her off the hook. Why should she quit? She's a good teacher. She's going to be successful. You just have to understand right now, everything piled up on you. Okay, so you're going to rest up from that. When you come back, we're going to adjust the class that you're in, get a more suitable class, and then you're going to see you're going to be very successful as a teacher. Amazing. Okay, now, I want to share with you a story. The story is, and I have permission to share this from the people involved, because there's real names. And I'm going to tell you the real names, just because it makes it more real. One of the key people in 30 Letters in 30 Days is Rabbi Shais Taub from West Bloomfield, Michigan. And he told me this story. His sister, Mrs. Treidel from Montreal, is a teacher in Beis Rivka, Montreal. And a few years ago, she was feeling like it often happens to teachers. You know, I don't know if I can continue this. Various things were going on. She had some health issues, and she was like, you know, I got to quit. So she tells her brother Levi, you know, I'm thinking of quitting teaching. I know that you're very into Igros, into the Rebbe's letters. Maybe you have a letter from the Rebbe about a teacher who wants to quit. So Levi says, first of all, I'm sure the Rebbe wouldn't let you quit. This is similar to the question I asked you at the beginning of this letter. But I don't know the letter. But if you give me some time, I'll look for one. Okay. So Levi's looking for a letter. Hold on, I'm going to make a bracha. So Levi's looking for a letter. And I think it took him a couple months before he found this letter that we're learning right now. So he sends it to his sister. He says, I think, you know, you don't get more of a direct answer than this. It's pretty similar to your situation. So the next day after he found that letter, he came to New York. And I know when it was. It was the first day of Hanukkah 3 years ago. And I know that because it was my daughter's wedding, because Levi came in for my daughter's wedding, which was Chuppah at 770. In fact, Levi, I forget which bracha he got under the chuppah, but he had one of the brachas under the chuppah. I don't know if he knew that when he came in. I think he would have come in either way. But he comes to New York. He goes to the aisle. At the aisle, who does he see? Rabbi Zilberstrom. Now, this is not the same Rabbi Zilberstrom from the letter. It's his son. The Rabbi Zilberstrom from the letter is Reb Aaron Mordechai, Olav Shalom. His son, Reb Tuvia, is also a teacher in Eretz Yisrael. So Levi goes over to Rabbi Zilberstrom and says, I just was reading a letter yesterday where the Rebbe told a teacher who was about to quit that she should speak to your father to get an objective viewpoint. So Rabbi Zilberstrom says to Levi, wow, you want to know something? I want to tell you something. You want to talk about teachers with burnout? I'll tell you a story. In Tafshin Samach Vav, okay, that's 2016. Yeah, 2016. So 2016 was that 9 years ago. He says, I came to the aisle and I had two papers. One was my personal pan with my personal requests for myself, my family. The other was a letter for my 28 students in school. He said the number, 28 students, all of their names, everything that they needed. I'm there to represent my class, my 28 students. So he says, I'm standing in the aisle, and the secret is I'm about to quit teaching. And I'm ready to tell the Rebbe, I'm quitting. I'm burnt out. But as I'm reading the letter with my 28 students and their names and all the brachas I'm asking for these students, each of their various different needs, I realize I can't abandon these students. So he says, at that point, I say to the Rebbe, Rebbe, I was going to quit. I'm not quitting. But see this other paper, the one with personal requests? I'll keep teaching, and I'm asking the Rebbe to take care of what's in the other paper about my personal requests. And then he came out of the aisle, and he decided, that's it. I'm going to continue teaching. Okay. He goes to Crown Heights. Rabbi Zilberstrom goes to Crown Heights. He's walking down the street, Kingston Avenue, and he sees somebody he thinks he recognizes, but he's not sure who they are. Abbe Castell from Tzach was standing outside. He says, who is that? He says, that is Eliezer Kalman Tiefenbrunn, Olav Shalom, the artist, very, very famous Hasidic artist. So he said, yeah, I know. And he was walking with his wife. So the Tiefenbrunns are walking down the street. So Reb Tovia Zilberstrom runs over to them, and he says to them, I want to ask you a question. Now, a little background. The Tiefenbrunn's son, Yossi, passed away at a very young age, tragically. He was the same age as, or similar age as Tovia Zilberstrom. They were good friends in yeshiva. So there was on one occasion where Yossi Tiefenbrunn wanted the sichos. Now this is before you had PDFs, right? You can't just WhatsApp somebody a PDF of sichos. You had to physically get the sichos. So he was speaking to Tovia Zilberstrom, who was in New York, and he was coming through London, and that's where Yossi was. So he told him, go to New York and get the sichos, and give the sichos to my mother. My mother, this was Shvuas Tafshin Lamed Vav, meaning 1976. My mother's going to be in Yechidus with the Rebbe. When you just wait for her. When she comes out, you give her the sichos. She'll bring the sichos to England for me. And as a present to you for giving her the sichos to bring to me, she'll give you one of my father's paintings of the Rebbe. Okay, so that's the background. So you following? 3 years ago at the aisle, Levi Shem Tov sees Tovia Zilberstrom the day after he found a letter, this letter that we just studied, which mentions Rabbi Zilberstrom's father. he approaches Rabbi Zolberstrom at the oil, and Rabbi Zolberstrom tells him a story that happened to him in 2016, where he saw the Tiefenbrunns walking down the street in Crown Heights right after he had just told the Rebbe at the oil, I'm not quitting teaching. Out of nowhere, seemingly like just illogically, Reb Tuvia Zolberstrom asks Mrs. Tiefenbrunn, he says, remember that time 30 years ago in 1976 when I waited for you when you were coming out of the Yechidus with the Rebbe and I gave you the sichas and you gave me your husband's painting? It was a really long Yechidus. You were there for over a half an hour. Do you mind sharing with me what did you speak about with the Rebbe? And this is from 30 years before, but for some reason he had never asked, never thought to ask, and now at this moment he's thinking to ask. So she says, I don't mind sharing, I'll tell you. She says, I don't want to say that I was arguing with the Rebbe, but I came to Yechidus to tell the Rebbe I'm quitting teaching. And for 30 minutes, the Rebbe tried to convince me that I cannot leave my post. She quoted the Rebbe's holy words. She said, the Rebbe told her, Mrs. Tiefenbrunn, wie viel teachers hat man in Lubavitch? She said teachers, the English word. Wie viel teachers hat man in Lubavitch? Und du willst von mir wegnehmen? And you want to take a teacher away, meaning yourself? At any rate, the Rebbe convinced her not to stop teaching. She says, that was my Yechidus. All of a sudden, you understand, Rav Tuvia Zolberstrom had just come from the oil, just with his commitment to not quit teaching. 30 years later, he's asking this question, what was your Yechidus about? She says, the Rebbe convinced me not to quit teaching. Boom, he says, to him, that was his clear answer. Okay, so he tells this story to Levi at the oil on the day of my daughter's wedding 3 years ago. And then Levi calls his sister and says, I've got more about that letter that I sent you. He filled her in. And since then, Levi and his sister have been going around telling everybody about the letter and the story about Rabbi Zolberstrom and the Tiefenbrunns. And basically, what Levi told me is every time I tell this story, some teacher comes over to me and says, I decided not to quit. All right, now I'm telling the story, and I hope I will get somebody to come over to me and tell me some teacher decided not to quit. Now, I'm almost done, but I got one more goodie for you. This is not from the Igros. This, like I said, not all of the Rebbe's letters are printed in the Igros. Igros is just the tip of the iceberg. There are many, many more letters that were not printed and are being found and published all the time. There's a follow-up letter to this teacher, to this woman. And this I just found a few hours ago. Lahak, they printed this letter and they sent it to one of the members of the 30 Letters in 30 Days team, and then they sent it to me. And I'm sharing it with you. This is not from the Igros, but Lahak printed this. Baruch Hashem Gimel Adar Tavshin Chof Aleph, Brooklyn, Bracha V'Shalom. This is from Gimel Adar. So the Rebbe writes, Noyem li lekabel mechtava mechof Aleph Shvat. Okay, Chof Aleph Shvat. Remember, the original letter was Rish Chodesh Shvat. The Rebbe's letter to her was Rish Chodesh Shvat. So however long it took her to get the letter, and then, Chof Aleph Shvat, she writes back. And then Gimel Adar, the Rebbe writes her back. And what did she write to him? Boy keseves asher chazra lavedasa bekedesh chinech altaras hakedesh shel yaldi Yisrael. The letter in which you wrote me to tell me to report that you've returned to your job in education, educating Jewish children. Asher kol echad mehem benoi hu shel melech malchem lochem hakadosh baruch hu, which every one of these Jewish children is a child of the King of all kings, the Holy One, blessed be He. Ubetach hachazara v'haknisa. So compassionate, so fatherly. The Rebbe says, certainly your return, your re-entry to teaching will be tzad achar tzad, step by step, like don't rush it. And the Rebbe's the one who encouraged her to return to teaching, but the Rebbe's telling her, do it step by step. The Ainlis Rashim, do not be affected, klal whatsoever, makshuyim ba'aver, by the past problems that you had. Like, move on. V'ulegam, and also maybe future problems that you're going to have, which don't panic, which is totally normal. for a person to have in this physical world. That's the nature of this physical world. People have problems. Don't worry. You're probably going to run into some problems, but you're going to be okay. You've got this. You are more than equipped. You're going to be a successful teacher. The letter goes on for a few more lines, but I'll just read to you the very end because I feel like it applies to us. Especially now as we are in the month of Adar, a month which is particularly successful for Jews in all of their matters. Yeah. Well, we are in the month of Adar right now, so I'll take that as a bracha. Bevracha l'besuras tevis, with a bracha that you should report good news, and that's the follow-up letter. So Baruch Hashem, a teacher who almost quit was shown the light that you've got this. You just got overwhelmed with a bunch of stuff that compounded all at once. Rest yourself up. Take care of your body. Understand that Yetzer Hara is going to always try to take advantage of your physical tiredness. Don't pay him any mind. Get back to teaching when you're ready. Take it gently, tzad echad, and you're going to be successful. You've got this. And especially now it's other special brachas. Okay. Good night. Thank you for joining us.